Senate Bill 5 affects state workers in Ohio, particularly of interest though to teachers, because what it does is it's proposing that the state get rid of collective bargaining. And collective bargaining is something that was won by, I believe, the teachers' unions in 1983. Prior to collective bargaining, you had basically strikes all the time. Okay, so union strikes because people were unhappy about wages, they were unhappy about safety conditions, they were unhappy about a multitude of things, ordinarily wages. So in 1983, it came about that the union was now going to be able to negotiate pay for all of its membership with school boards. And this opened up the floodgates for all unions to be able to negotiate. So what Senate Bill 5 does is it says no more collective bargaining. It says that we're going to pay teachers now and state employees not based on what their union has negotiated, but based on their merit, based on what they should earn. Okay, which to a degree makes sense, because if you think about the corporate world, that's how things work. Like, you are paid based on the job that you do. Did you do a good job? How long have you been here? What is your education? It gets a little muddy because with that argument, because teachers and education don't work under the same tenets of business. In business, you can refuse service. In business, the end-all be-all is making a profit off of a product. Right? So it's hard to assess what anybody is worth. But you could say, at the end of the day, you made 10 widgets sell, whereas, Greg only made 5 widgets sell. You get the raise, Greg doesn't. In education, you can't refuse service to anybody. So the idea is merit-based pay. And there's no objective way to say what a teacher is worth. What is merit in education? Is it graduation rates? Is it passage of the OGT? Is it, test scores on the ACT? Is it attendance rates? I mean, there's no way to say that the teacher is the specific reason that a student did well, right? So the main argument, in my opinion, as a teacher, for Senate Bill 5 is flawed. The argument that these people should not be able to collectively bargain for themselves, they should be paid on their own individual merits, doesn't make sense because it's not an apples-to-apples comparison. Furthermore, I've heard a lot of people say about teachers that they are overpaid. I've heard a lot of people say, teachers get summer off. Okay, yes, true. You get 2.5 months off. The idea that you're not working during that time is a fallacy. Every summer I take courses, I teach classes oftentimes. Look past the whole summers off thing, and people still say, you're working, a part-time job, you're working 9.5 months a year, and you're making X number of dollars. Compare that to somebody else in the working world with the same number of years of experience and the same education, teachers are making more. It's not true. There are a number of studies that you can look at that have been done recently, because this issue is happening right now in Wisconsin and in Ohio, that blatantly show that is inaccurate. Anecdotally, I can tell you that from my own experience, my brother-in-law just got his first job as an engineer. He has the same level of education as I do. He has 3 years less work experience. He is making more money than my wife and I combined in his first job. That's anecdotal, but again, you look at these studies that say, like, here's what teachers are paid, here's what other people with a master's degree and 10 years of work experience are paid. It is so disproportionate. Teachers are not making more money than people in the regular business world. Beyond that, again, it's not the same job. It's apples to oranges. You cannot compare the two. A term that I heard recently that I think it applies and is really funny is that this is Tea Party socialism. It's this idea that I feel like teachers are paid more than me. Their pay comes out of tax dollars. That's not fair. They should be paid the same or less than me. That's socialism. Like, that's the idea that we all make a level playing field. It also doesn't take into account that you're wrong. Teachers make less than people with the same level of education. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, people get this feeling that, like, money comes out of my taxes, that they shouldn't be paid well. It comes out of my taxes too. I am paying for other teachers to teach in other districts. The only alternative that you can have to public school is a private school or a charter school. Those are the only options that exist. A charter school typically exists because somebody else is funding it, normally like a corporation or a wealthy individual, I guess. A public school exists because people can afford to pay tuition for their kids to go. Most middle-class Americans cannot afford to send their kids to a private school. The amount of money that you pay in your taxes that goes towards all things, right? Educating your kids, paving your roads, making your libraries stay open, cleaning your water and sending it to your house, taking the garbage out, keeping you safe at night while you sleep, putting water on your house if it's burning. All of these things go into your taxes. And what do people pay in property taxes? I mean, in where I live, it's $3,500 a year. $3,500 to get all of that. I don't understand. It would cost you $10,000 to $20,000 to send your kid to a private school. And the jury is still out on whether private or public schools are better. Again, how do you judge better? Test scores? There's no objective way to measure it. The fact that politicians right now are saying teachers are paid too much, state workers are paid too much, they should be paid less, it's coming out of your taxes, that's not fair. That doesn't make any sense. It's not as though you're sending your money away and then it disappears. You get a very tangible service from the money that you're paying, and the money you're paying is so minuscule. A term that's thrown around a lot that I think is kind of trite, but I think is the only way you can describe it, is it's class warfare. You've got millionaire, elitist, usually conservatives, usually white men, saying, hey, this middle class person who makes 2% more than you, but has a master's degree and you have a bachelor's degree, that's not fair. Aren't you mad about that? And you get neighbor to fight neighbor. You get, a truck driver to say, well, that's not fair. Well, I'm sorry, but a truck driver, in most cases doesn't have a degree at all. You get somebody with a bachelor's degree who's working their first job in a temp agency to get angry about it. Yeah, those teachers make more than me. That's not fair. I'm sorry, but that's what capitalism is, right? Like, you work your way up in the world. Teachers start a little higher than a lot of people. Like, when my first job, the first year I taught was, I think, $38,000, right? Which, maybe working in the Apple Store, that's probably not going to be your first year's salary. But somebody who works in the Apple Store for 30 years could end up coming out of there at, $250,000 a year if they work their way up the ranks. A teacher is going to end their career 35 years in at $85,000. That's what my brother-in-law is making his first year as an engineer. There is ample time for him to climb the ladder. So I think by and large, people respect the work that teachers do. People are easily misinformed by politicians who are trying to pass easy solutions to temporary solutions to long-term problems. Cutting the pay of state workers and of teachers is not going to fill the huge gap that we have in our state budget. It's not going to take care of it. And our governor was elected supposedly on this platform of, I'm going to create jobs and I'm going to fill the deficit hole, right? I'm going to get us back in the red. I'm going to get us back in the red. I don't see how you do that by cutting state workers. If your goal is to simply create jobs and have no qualifier on that, not to say high-paying jobs or high-tech jobs or jobs of the future or jobs that are truly important to the fabric of society, if your qualifier is a number of jobs, yeah, you force enough people out of state jobs and then they go work at Arby's. Like, good job. Like, yeah, you created a couple more jobs. Were they better paying? No. Are those people now going to be able to pay more taxes and help fill the deficit? No. Are those people going to go out and buy a new iPhone? No. Like, it doesn't make any sense. The kind of person who goes into public service isn't looking for a lot of money. They're not looking to make a fortune. They're not an entrepreneur. They're somebody who typically cares about other people. Not that entrepreneurs don't, but there's somebody who wants to just enrich lives. They want to go out and do a job that they can feel good about at the end of the day. In return for that, all they're really looking for is civil service jobs, typically have better benefits, and better pension. It's security. It's, do you want to gamble that you might make the next big thing and be filthy rich? Or do you want to play it safe, feel good about your job, and go home at the end of the day knowing I'll be able to retire, okay, no big deal, I'll move to Florida, I'll die, you know? There's nothing wrong with either way of living, but our politicians would have us believe that there is something wrong with it. They would have us believe that I am very selfish because I want to maintain a certain quality of life. Because the people who are in charge don't have to worry about money. John Kasich is a millionaire. He is 100% behind this bill. This has nothing to do with him, right? Your original question was, do people want to foot the bill? I think yes, people, by and large, do not mind paying taxes to get what they get. I think people are easily swayed by rhetoric. And I think the rhetoric right now is anti-teacher, anti-state worker, and anti-paying for services, right? I've been to a lot of countries where nobody pays taxes and nobody takes your garbage away and nobody cleans your water, and it's not a way that I want to live. And I think if you polled most Americans, they wouldn't want to live that way either. You could start the USA chant and say we're number one. It's kind of true. I mean, we have some really wonderful things here. We have a wonderful, comfortable way of life. And I think that we've gotten to a point where we've taken it for granted and we don't remember or know what it would be like if it wasn't so comfortable. And so you keep chiseling away at the people who sort of make that run, you're going to have a less comfortable way of living. Senate Bill 5 really comes down to trying to dismantle unions. Conservatives hate unions because they say it's not a fundamental right that you should be able to bargain for your pay. They say it's not a fundamental right that you should be protected by anybody. I don't know where I stand on that. What I do know is that in a job where you're already overworked and underpaid, you do need somebody to represent you. In a job where somebody could say that you did something and immediately you could be fired, you need somebody to step in and say, no, that person doesn't get fired right away. There's going to be an investigation. In jobs where safety issues are concerned, I don't necessarily trust a governmental agency to say, yeah, it's safe for this work site to not have a hard hat. You know, like those are things that came about because of unions, because it's a group of people coming together and saying, we deserve a little better. We deserve this. There's a notion that unions' primary function is to negotiate wages and protect the weakest members of the union. I just don't see that as realistic. The union that I'm in, I've been there for 4 years, and in that time we have voted to suspend our pay more premium and health insurance, and we have voted to give more discretion to the district to terminate bad employees. We are doing things that make sense. We are doing things that are reasonable. We are not saying, is a really horrible teacher, but he's one of us, so let's just keep him around, all right? That doesn't happen. Like, of course, you are going to find extreme cases on the bell curve, right? Most people are going to be here on a bell curve, and then there's going to be a couple of exceptional people and a couple of really crappy outliers, and they're going to be protected by the union, absolutely. By and large, unions take a look at what is the economic forecast, and they make their requests based on that. My district is not giving out raises. We've voted to suspend our pay for the next 2 years because the economic outlook is very bleak. It's not as though we're like, well, sorry, everybody else is taking a hit, but we want more money, like we were promised that. Unions negotiate. They're negotiators. They do not go to the bargaining table and say, this is how it's going to be, and that's that. It's a negotiation. That is what Senate Bill 5 is trying to get rid of. The ability for the worker to go to the administration and say, this is what we're throwing down on the table. Show me your best offer. That option will not exist if this goes through for any state employee. That is a terrifying thought. The Conservative Party has been trying to get rid of unions for years. And granted, the 1970s unions were thugs. Like, it was not a good place to be. Teachers' unions of today, nobody is putting horses' heads in anybody's bed. Nobody's getting thrown into, vats of concrete. It's a completely different world. And I think that there's still some people are holding on to this notion that like Jimmy Hoffa is in charge of all unions. Nobody's breaking any kneecaps in the teachers union that I know of, at least. So yeah, I think that it's the conservative movement is let capitalism run unfettered, get rid of this organization that is meant to sort of act as a failsafe for the employee, and kill it. And the teachers unions are the strongest ones right now, I think. And I think that's why they're being targeted by a number of states right now, is the idea is take out their legs, and UAW and all those other unions that are just barely holding on for dear life, they'll go under with them. I would be completely willing to give up, and I speak for just myself here, but personally, I would be willing to give up certain liberties that are afforded by the union. Some of the protections that are provided by the union, because I do know some bad teachers, and I do think that maybe they should be evaluated on different criteria and let the administration of the school have the final say in whether they stay there. What I'm not willing to give up is collective bargaining. We're already underpaid, we're overworked. You get rid of that, and every school district is going to say, look, our budget doesn't look so good, we could cut from the top, where people are way overpaid and aren't in a union, or we could cut from you guys, the masses. We'll take a little bit away from everybody, and we'll solve the problem that way. Is that the society you really want to live in, where the middle class keeps getting chopped down, chopped down, chopped down? It's not where I want to live, and that's why I am completely opposed to the proposition right now. I think that good teachers are always going to be teachers. People who are passionate about it will be teachers. I think what's going to happen is that you're going to see a mass exodus from the state of Ohio. If other states are paying this much more, and you still want to be a teacher, and it's within your means to move, what would stop you? Right? You're going to lose a lot of people from the state, and not just teachers, but state employees. If there are other states that still have a reasonable wage and still have a union that, is there for you, why wouldn't you move? The whole thing has economic disaster written on it. Do you really want to create more low-paying jobs? You want to create jobs that are low-paying and get rid of people who are qualified? All you're going to do is run people out of the state. Are the students going to suffer? I don't know. I mean, if you get rid of enough good teachers who go somewhere else, yeah, maybe. But again, teachers don't go into the profession because they're going to make a bunch of money. Like, this isn't the sort of thing where, oh, you're paying us less, so we're going to stop working as hard. Maybe a few people will. I can think of one or two names, but by and large, no, that's not what public servants do. I think it boils down to respect, and it's a colossal disrespect that the government is showing. There are so many other ways that you could cut and trim and make ends meet without taking out your support system, Is education the most important part of our country? I wouldn't say that just because I don't want to be at the risk of sounding arrogant. I think for me it was. I think that I went into it because I think that, one, I got to continue doing something that I have a passion for, the arts. I get to pass that on to another generation. But yeah, I do think that those are formative years, when you're in school. And it can make all the difference if you have lousy teachers or if you have amazing teachers. I think education is one of the most important things in our country. I think that without a stellar foundation, you don't get stellar citizens. Is it the most important thing? No. Our lives are so multifaceted, but it is an incredible building block in a person's life, and yeah, why toy with that? I think people typically have a favorable view of teachers because it is a public service. That said, there are a lot of people who also think, some teachers are lazy and that they're protected by the union. And I'll agree. I know bad teachers. I had bad teachers. Everybody had bad teachers. There are also incredibly caring, wonderful individuals. And I would challenge anybody to think about people that they work with who also are not very good at what they do, who don't really care. This is not a problem that exists just in education or just in state jobs. This is a human issue. You are going to run into turds. Like, poop floats. So this notion that, oh, you know, those teachers, they get their summers off and all they do is Xerox worksheets and they're overpaid babysitters. Sorry, that's just not true. Like, I would invite anybody to come spend a day in my classroom, follow me around, and see what I do. And granted, I'm an art teacher, so like I'm you know, you take a normal teacher and the respect level is here. Like, I'm playing with finger paint, right? Follow me around for a day. You will see that on any given day, I have 146 kids who are asking me questions, looking for guidance, whether it's with the assignment that we're doing or in their personal life, right? It is not a cushy job. When you're a teacher, you are on 100% of the time. I've never worked any other professional careers, but I can't think of any off the top of my head where whenever you're around people, you have to be on. Like, I don't know what those jobs would be. And that's what teaching is. One last point I want to make that I don't think I made before. Before collective bargaining, there were all these strikes because everybody was unhappy about their pay or the way that they were being treated. Since collective bargaining, the number of strikes that have happened in any union have declined so steeply because the number of successful contract negotiations that go through far outweigh, you know, the stalemates that happen. Why? Because you have a stronger support system where people can say, you know, this is what we want, and the union can say, this is what you're probably going to get. And then the union can go to the board or to the administration and say, this is what we're asking for. And then they work from there. Before that, it was just a free-for-all. And you had all these strikes, and you know, the employees would say, no, that's not enough. And the union had no clout, no way to say, like, guys, come on, like, be reasonable. In my view, collective bargaining has been one of the things that has saved money over the long run and has kept people a little more reasonable about what kind of raise are they actually entitled to. And most of these raises, by the way, are just keeping up with inflation. These are not like, hey, good job, you got better test scores this year, you all get $10,000 extra dollars. Like, it doesn't happen that way. It's hey, you've worked for X number of years, you get paid an extra $1,000 now to keep up with inflation. So collective bargaining, I think, is a really, really important component that cannot go away.